Well, good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's Last Post ceremony. My name is Richard Cruz, and joining us today from the Australian Army is Colonel Frank Colley. Today, we commemorate the 105th anniversary of the attempt to breach the Dardanelles. During the early months of the First World War, Britain, France, and Russia sought to weaken the Ottoman Empire and take control of the straits that provided a supply route to Russia. On the 18th of March 1915, an Allied fleet began the main attack against the narrowest point of the Dardanelles, where the straits are around 1 mile wide. While the Ottoman defences took damage, civilian manned minesweepers were forced to retreat under the Ottoman artillery fire, leaving the minefields mostly intact. HMS Irresistible and HMS Inflexible struck mines, and Irresistible was sunk. When HMS Ocean was sent to rescue Irresistible, it struck a mine and was abandoned. After French battleships sailed through a new line of mines and were also damaged, a general recall was sounded to protect what remained of the force. After this failed naval attack, the Australian and New Zealand Army Corps prepared for an amphibious landing on the Gallipoli Peninsula that took place on the 25th of April. In January 1916, after 8 months fighting with approximately 250,000 casualties on each side, the land campaign was abandoned and the invasion force withdrawn. Today, the Gallipoli campaign is widely regarded as Australia's baptism of fire, and Anzac Day has become a national day of remembrance that commemorates all Australians who served and died in all wars, conflicts, and peacekeeping operations. This afternoon, we remember one such individual. As always, we welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that love and support them. We acknowledge the members of RSL and Services Clubs Association, RSL Victoria and RSL Queensland, who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony across Australia. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the pool of reflection by visitors to the memorial. Australia's Federation Guard is a tri-service ceremonial unit of the Australian Defence Force. They provide a ceremonial presence at civil and military events and during visits to Australia by foreign dignitaries. The Guard will now dismount the catafalque party from the tomb of the unknown Australian soldier within the Hall of Memory. If you're able, please stand and join in singing the national anthem.
Australians, oh, let us rejoice, for we are young and free. We've golden soil and wealth for toil, our home is girt by sea. Our land abounds in nature's gifts of beauty rich and rare. In history's page let every stage advance Australia fair. In joyful strains then let us sing, advance Australia fair.
If you're able, please be seated. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn their loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit, in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight we'll read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 102,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and on operations for more than a century. But first we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths and floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the pool of reflection.
Today, we remember and pay tribute to Sergeant David John Anderson. David Anderson, known as Jack, was born on the 30th of July, 1896, to David and Jessie Anderson of Bendigo, Victoria. His father was a chemist in Bendigo, and Jack passed examinations in pharmacy before taking an apprenticeship in his father's shop to become a chemist himself. He was also interested in military matters, holding a commission as a lieutenant in the local senior cadets. He also maintained his links to his high school, serving as the secretary of the Bendigo High School Old Students Society. When war broke out, Jack Anderson was extremely keen to be involved, and despite his young age, his parents supported his enlistment. He went to the recruiting office in Bendigo in September 1914 and enlisted as a private soldier in order to get to the front as soon as possible. He proved an able soldier and was promoted to sergeant almost straight away. He left Australia for active service overseas with the 8th Battalion on the 22nd of December 1914. Sergeant Anderson was first sent to Egypt, where he continued training with his battalion in the desert. At some point in the new year, he cut his thumb on the cover of his fob watch by accident. He later wrote, "I took no notice of it and went on performing my usual duties, guard, trench digging, etc." In the days before antibiotics, even the smallest wound could prove dangerous, and in this case, Sergeant Anderson's small cut led to general septicemia. He had to be operated on and took several weeks to recover. Anderson had just come out of hospital when he heard that his battalion was going into action. His doctor absolutely refused to recommend his discharge, so Anderson went to his colonel, who allowed him to serve on the landing craft during the Anzac landing. Anderson later wrote, "While I was in the boat assisting the dying and the wounded, shrapnel burst within 20 yards from us. I luckily escaped it all. After waiting for 2 days, we sailed back with the wounded to Alexandria, and I am still hoping to get into battle next week alongside my comrades." Anderson was sent back to Lemnos, where he wrote that he had been put in charge of all the stores and equipment of the 8th Battalion, the result of which, he added, was that I am becoming an expert sailor. Each time he found himself off the coast of Gallipoli, he was watching and itching to get in. Sergeant Jack Anderson finally got the opportunity he wanted when he joined the 8th Battalion on the Gallipoli Peninsula on the 12th of June 1915. Shortly after his arrival, he wrote to a friend, "We're having a splendid time. The only thing is that if the Turks continue to pelt such big pits of lead at us, they're going to hit someone, and then there will be a row. Today, one piece went through my hat, and another floored the man next to me." Anderson had been in the firing line for just 4 days when a high explosive shell landed near his position, quickly followed by another. Harold Jackson, probably serving with the Medical Corps, later wrote, "He must have been killed outright, wounded head, body and thigh. He would have been quite unconscious of anything happening. He was probably not even conscious of the noise of the explosion. On the morning of his death, I saw him. He was in splendid heart and seemed to really enjoy the excitement of it." Like most soldiers, Anderson wrote regular letters to his parents at home. David Anderson received a letter full of cheery optimism on Monday evening, the 5th of July. The following morning, he was showing the letter with pride to a commercial traveller in his shop when the Reverend J. Crookston entered the shop. He was there to tell David Anderson the news that his son had been killed in action 2 weeks earlier on the 16th of June. Sergeant Jack Anderson was buried in Shrapnel Valley Cemetery, where he lies today under the simple epitaph, thy will be done. He died aged 18. His name is listed on the Roll of Honour on my right among almost 62,000 Australians who died while serving in the First World War. His photograph is displayed today beside the pool of reflection. This is but one of many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Sergeant David John Anderson, who gave his life for us in the hope of a better world.
Please stand for the reading of the ode and the sounding of the last post.
They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them.
We will remember them.
Lest we forget.
Lest we forget. We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Pozières or in the low scrub at Gallipoli, with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain, has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, that concludes this evening's last post ceremony. We thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial and wish you all a very good evening. Thank you.